Hello everyone, this is Zooc and today I'm bringing you a new cooking video. This one is going to be my version of chicken fried rice, which I like to call rice fried chicken. I'm going to list some key differences between what I make and what I've experienced in most Chinese takeout stores and the reasoning behind the choices I make in cooking this dish. Now I'm back in Romania. I arrived a couple of days ago, but I still have footage for a couple of cooking videos that I want to get out. In the following 3 weeks, I have to crank out as much work as possible, which has caught up to me quite hardcore because I haven't done much of anything while I was in Prague for a month. But after those 3 weeks, I'm definitely going back to Prague since I already rented my apartment, where I will be staying for yet another month. Because why the fuck not? It's awesome there, and I had a really good time with my girl, and why not go again, right? So, anyway, let's talk about chicken fried rice. Now, most people, probably the largest majority, likes Chinese cooking or Chinese food. There is a major difference between American-inspired Chinese food, or European in this case, since I'm not in America, and actual legit Chinese food. There is a series of documentaries called A Bite of China, made by the Chinese, which details, it's basically food porn, but it details like all the regional cuisines and what Chinese actually eat in China, and it's really amazing. So if you want to look that up on YouTube, they have all the episodes with subtitles. It's called A Bite of China. If you're into that sort of stuff, this is like the best thing you can watch, and it's truly fascinating to see how Chinese approach cuisine in general. So anyway, let's talk about the American style of Chinese food, since that's kind of how it originated, this whole culture around Chinese food and fascination with it. It's vastly different from what Chinese eat, but at the same time, it's not bad. And it does take a bit of effort, I would say, to put out decent Chinese food. There are a lot of key things to take into account, such as how you're cooking it. Is it in a wok? Is it on a proper burner? Chinese food, actual real Chinese food and American-inspired Chinese food is cooked in woks on very, very powerful burners, which offer you that stir-fry texture and flavor to vegetables, which you cannot really ever get in a pan on a regular gas stove, or especially in this case on an electric stove. I hate those things, but I understand why people don't want gas lines and stuff, and it's like more expensive and a bigger hassle. So, whatever. So my version is called rice fried chicken because it has a lot of fucking chicken in it. That was one of the key disappointments I had with most Chinese takeout places that I've eaten from. It just doesn't have enough meat in it. It's mostly rice, and it's some random vegetables scattered around, and chicken that looks like leftovers, and just really not a lot of flavor and a lot of interestingness about it. It's just kind of bland and boring from most places. And, you know, I probably haven't been to or haven't eaten from like a high-class Chinese restaurant, if there even are any. Most Chinese restaurants just fit in your regular like takeout delivery type of place. But I'm sure there are some maybe higher class, more expensive Chinese places that actually do a really good job. I know there was one in Vegas where I had some crazy fusion pork buns, which were pretty awesome and all that. But let's say for the average person who won't get to experience that, cooking this dish at home might come as a pleasant change from what you usually get if you order. So the vegetables used in this chicken fried rice are celery, onion, peppers, and carrots. The celery is not really common in Chinese cooking, but I add it anyway because I don't feel the need to adhere to any sort of guidelines that are randomly imposed. I just want to make a tasty meal. And you can call it Chinese, or you can call it Asian inspired, or you can call it like European fusion, it doesn't matter. It's still based around the general concept of chicken fried rice. So first off, I'm going to start with some shiitake mushrooms. These are Asian mushrooms. They use them in a bunch of stuff over there. But you can usually find them in supermarkets dried up and dehydrated. Those need to be soaked for about half an hour. The prep stage for this dish requires about half an hour to an hour, and the cooking itself is literally like less than 10 minutes, I would say. So grab like a handful of shiitake mushrooms and soak them in boiling water, about a cup of boiling water for half an hour until they swell up. And next up, I'm going to grab 3 chicken breast halves, cut them into cubes, and make something like a semi-marinade for them, which consists of 2 egg whites with a splash of soy sauce. I'm using Pearl River Bridge soy sauce. This is basically the best one you can get, so if you If you're a fan of this style cooking and you use soy sauce often, Pearl River Bridge is a really good brand. And also a splash of Shaoxing rice wine. You can substitute white wine for it, but white wine has the fruity flavor, which you don't really want here. Chinese wine has a very distinct, less fruity and less grapey kind of flavor because it's made from rice, obviously. But it generally works for most Chinese-like dishes that I've cooked. So cube up the chicken breast and soak it in this egg white, soy sauce, and rice wine mixture. And I also added a bit of salt because I use reduced sodium soy sauce. I couldn't find any other kind, and it's not as salty as I'd want it. But do not throw away the yolks from those 2 eggs because we're going to use it for the egg part of the chicken fried rice. In most cases, chicken fried rice will contain a shredded form of omelette, which is very nice, and it fits the whole thing. So once that's soaking, I'm going to start on the vegetable stage. Vegetables are basically 2 ribs of celery, which you cut lengthwise into strips, and then turn them around and chop them up real fine like you see there. And then half an onion, half a big onion, which I'm also going to dice very fine. With vegetables, basically, I am aiming for them to be as big as the grains of rice. So you have a semi-uniform texture when you're stir-frying everything in the pan at once. Next up is going to be a red pepper. You can use green or yellow, whichever you have on hand, which is also going to be finely diced, cut into julienne strips, and then turn around and diced. And the last part is going to be the carrot, which is, I guess, a little bit more problematic to cut so fine. But you can probably get away with grating it, to be honest. It'll probably be easier if you don't have the knife skills. But the way I do it is to just cut it into thin strips and then lay the strips out on top of each other, cut that whole thing into julienne, and then, actually it's called brunoise if I think about it, but who the fuck uses these terms anyway in normal life? And then turn them around 90 degrees and chop them as fine as grains of rice. And you put all of those vegetables in just a random bowl and just leave them there. And then next up, you grab a couple of cloves of garlic, grate them or chop them real fine, and some fresh ginger. It basically needs to be about 1-to-1 ratio of garlic to ginger, and total about a tablespoon of each. And that's going to be pretty much your entire vegetable base for this whole thing. This whole stage of vegetable cutting and prepping should take about 20 minutes to half an hour, so once you're done with that, you can get on to the actual cooking part. So for the cooking, we'll start off with the mushrooms. They go in first. Actually, no, they don't go in first. The chicken goes in first. But just grab the mushrooms, squeeze them to get all of the liquid out, and then dice them pretty fine. Most of the shiitake mushrooms I've actually encountered in Europe they're pretty tough even after soaking. Like, they're very chewy, so they need to be chopped fine. But they really lend a very distinctive taste to the dish, which I think is hard to replace. You can use normal mushrooms, fresh or canned, but it's not really the same. Like, I really just recommend going for shiitake in this case. But again, if you don't want to spend the money for those, regular mushrooms will do, but you have to fry them up for a while to get all of the water out, so that doesn't make for a watery dish, because the rest of the vegetables will have quite a bit of water in them as well, and you're going to be adding a bit of liquid to the veggies as well in the form of soy sauce, rice wine, and whatever else I'm going to add later on. So anyway, the liquid from the mushrooms, don't throw that away. What you can do with that, if you want to go the extra mile, which I didn't in this case, but I usually do, I just forgot here because I was distracted. Take the liquid from the mushrooms, put it in a small pot with a cube of chicken stock or just a teaspoon of chicken powder, and just boil it down until it reduces by about 2/3 and it gets to almost like a pasty consistency. Still has to be liquid. And if you add that on top of the vegetables, it's going to be like just an insane burst of flavor. It's really kick-ass if you do that. So just boil it down with one of those gel cubes of chicken stock or just a regular cube. But of course, it depends on how much salt those things contain, because you don't want to add too much salt to it. So anyway, after all that's done, you take a plate or a bowl and you put a lot of cornstarch in it, because we're going to dredge the chicken. Yeah, this is what they do for General Tso's chicken. A lot of times, or any Chinese dish that has chicken coated in sauce, generally they dredge it in cornstarch and fry it. So I decided to do the same for my dish, and it works very well. It just makes everything better, especially the meat, which is the key part of it. So you take about half the chicken that was marinating in the soy sauce egg white thing. You dredge it in the cornstarch. You put a pan on the heat with a thin layer of oil on high heat, and you fry up about half the chicken at once. You can't put all the chicken in because it's too much and it'll crowd the pan, unless you have a pan with a diagonal of like 50 centimeters, in which case I want it, so send me one of those. But yeah, just fry up half a batch of chicken. You can actually overcook these, so don't go nuts. It'll take about 10 minutes to get all of them done, I think. So just grab the largest piece you can, break it in half, see if that's cooked, and if that's cooked, then the rest are going to be cooked as well. It really doesn't need to go crazy, but just get like a golden crust on them. That's kind of the idea of it. And the chicken is going to be really soft and tender inside. Somehow that marinade does something to it. No, I generally don't believe in marinades because they're mostly bullshit and they don't really penetrate the meat as much as cookbooks say they do. Like, oh yeah, just marinate this for 10 minutes and it'll taste like this all the way through. No, it doesn't. For bigger pieces, it does pretty much nothing except maybe penetrate like 0.5 millimeter of it. But in this case, it actually does make the chicken taste really nice and it has a very good texture, which works with the dish. So after about half the chicken is fried, put it out on a plate. Do the same for the second batch of chicken. You're probably going to need to add more oil to the pan because it's going to soak it up. After that's done, we're going to make an omelet. Now grab those 2 yolks that remain from the eggs that you used for the chicken marinade. Add a third egg to it because you need that egg white in there. I usually add about a small splash of soy sauce to it, to the omelet. Pour that in the pan and just cook it until it's done. Put that with the chicken aside. Just shred it with a spatula in the pan or after it's out. And now we're going to get to stir-frying the veggies. Obviously, stir-frying on an electric stove is a real pain in the ass because you can't actually move the pan a lot and move the vegetables around a lot. But hey, I do with what I can. So as I said, we're going to start off with the mushrooms. This is all on high heat. So put some oil in, wait till it heats up, throw the mushrooms in. You got to move pretty quick with this one. You can't let them sit there and fry up because they'll shrivel up and get hard. After the mushrooms fry for about 15-20 seconds, you add the ginger and the garlic and you mix that up with the mushrooms. Don't let it burn. The garlic will burn so easy. It's really bad and it tastes like ass if it gets to that point. So this all takes a few seconds. Mix that with the mushrooms until you can smell the flavor and then add all the vegetables to it. Vegetables are going to have a lot of water, so they need to be in there for about 4 minutes in total. So just move them around and distribute them throughout the pan until they let off most of their water and are still crunchy a little bit. Like they don't have to be cooked soft. The point of stir frying is to not let the vegetables get soft. So the total frying time for all of the vegetables is going to be around 4 minutes. About 3 minutes in, you add about a tablespoon of soy sauce and about a tablespoon of rice wine, Shaoxing rice wine. Now, when I'm at home, also, the most important thing, I think, is oyster sauce. I forgot to mention that. So you add the oyster sauce, the soy sauce, and the rice wine, and you let that mix and mingle. It's going to color it significantly. It's going to look at like a dark brownish color, and that's totally fine. When I'm at home, I usually add fish sauce as well. I think that's a pretty key ingredient, but I didn't find any fish sauce in Prague, so I just made it with the ingredients I had on hand. You can actually omit the oyster sauce if you don't want to buy a bottle just for this stuff, but oyster sauce is actually quite useful in a lot of applications, like beef and broccoli. That's an oyster sauce-based dish. Also, some more chicken and beef stir fries are great with that. Seafood stir fries works with that too. It doesn't really taste like oysters as much as it gives it a very deep and rich flavor that works well with the dish. So a tablespoon of oyster sauce, soy sauce, and Shaoxing rice wine, and let that mix. And then you add the chicken back in. You can have the heat on medium at this point. It doesn't really need to be stir frying like super high flame. You add the chicken, you mix that in, and then you add the rice, which has to be cooked. They say the best rice for this sort of stuff is rice that was cooked the previous day, but I think it works just fine with freshly cooked rice. And I explained exactly how I make the rice in my first video, Not Your Mama's Chicken and Rice. So you can click that on the screen now, and you'll see me talking about how to make the perfect basmati rice. You mix that in, you turn off the heat because you don't want the rice to burn. And then you mix in the egg as well, and you add about 1.5 tablespoons of sesame oil. I really like sesame oil in this. Sesame oil is not a cooking oil, it's a finishing oil. So you put it after everything is cooked. You can't fry in it. Not really. Doesn't work that way. So just put about a splash of sesame oil, and then you can garnish it with some freshly chopped scallions or green onions, or you can also put some chives on it. You can also put sesame seeds if you want to make it special, but it's pretty good just as it is. Now this dish is something that I've been making for years now. For at home at least, I have no better form of it. You can also add mung bean sprouts to it. You can add bamboo shoots to it, chestnuts, any of the typically Asian vegetables that you find on menus. It all works very well. This is like a dump dish. You can dump everything you want in it, but the main things that I did differently as opposed to Chinese restaurants is actually put more effort into your chicken. That's one thing that I do, and it pays off. And be sure to chop the vegetables fine enough so you don't take like half a pepper in your mouth like I've seen some restaurants do. Yeah, vegetable fried rice, and you had like literally a quarter of a pepper in there not chopped. It's just ridiculous. And all of the flavorings. Like restaurants don't usually put soy sauce in their chicken fried rice. They don't put oyster sauce. They don't put all of these sauces that I do. Hoisin sauce works as well, just fine. But the main ones I would say is oyster sauce and soy sauce. These are the ones that give the most flavor. You can skip the rice wine. If you don't have rice wine, I would not add white wine to this to the dish, to the veggies. You can add it to the chicken, that works fine, but not to the actual stir frying. So just go for the rice wine. Don't buy the cooking wine, because there, of course, gotta warn you, there is a type of product called Chinese cooking wine, which is pretty bad. So just get the regular, legit Shaoxing rice wine from an Asian store. It'll be worth your while. And this method of marinating the chicken in egg whites, it works for larger pieces as well and makes for a really thin, crispy, crunchy crust on them. It's a really awesome method. Part velveting, like Chinese have a thing called velveting, in which they mix like baking soda with a bit of flavoring sauces, and they put the chicken in there, and the baking soda works on tenderizing the meat. But they also have another type of velveting in which they coat the chicken in egg white with a mixture of various things like I did here. This works just fine too. So yeah, that's going to be it for the rice fried chicken. Decidedly so. I mean, it's a lot of chicken, and I prefer it this way as opposed to just eating tons of rice with bland vegetables. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys for my next video, which is going to be also something meat-based, probably meatballs. I do believe it was meatballs that I recorded. I make some pretty kick-ass meatballs with tomato sauce. I think you're going to like that one. So yeah, I'm just going to end it here. Thanks a lot for watching. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.